Good evening, and welcome to today's VIC streams for our program Discovering Flamenco by Dr. Francisco Bethencourt Llobet, musician, musicologist, and professor at Complutense University in Madrid, one of Spain's premier universities from where he's speaking to us today. As a practitioner and scholar of the flamenco form, he has performed widely, has been prolific with recordings and publications in English and Spanish, and from all accounts is a teacher who has inspired many. Welcome, Professor Bethencourt.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We are honored to have you with us. This program is in collaboration with the Indian Music Experience Museum, and it is part of our quarterly series on music from around the world. One of the many insights in the series has been how much and how far music travels, transcending borders. From our first lecture in the series on jazz, which was born in the African diaspora and brought to Indian shores by African-American musicians who came to cities like Bombay and Calcutta in the early 20th century, to our second lecture on reggae, whose distinctive sound reached distant lands far from the island of its origin, Jamaica, to our third lecture on country music, which traveled with migrant workers across North America. Flamenco, the subject of our fourth lecture today, is also a confluence of hybrid strands of musical cultures. In the popular imagination, and for many of us here, flamenco conjures up images of the south of Spain, its landscape of Moorish fortresses and erstwhile mosques turned cathedrals, and of dancers in ruffled dresses performing elaborate footwork with percussive energy and rhythmic flourishes akin to our own dance forms of the subcontinent, such as Kathak. The songs, cante, and the sounds of the guitar have an emotional intensity and expressiveness whose draw for us comes perhaps from the gypsy origins of the music in the Roma migration from Rajasthan to Spain between the 9th and 14th centuries, where their songs, dances, and instruments, such as tambourines and castanets, were interwoven with the indigenous Byzantine musical cultures and those of the Sephardic Jews and the Moors. There are many shared connections with Indian music, the use of microtones, rhythmic complexity, melodic improvisation, and audience interaction. With its many migrations, the music raises questions of home, belonging, displacement, and the experience of being the perpetual outsider. Professor Bethencourt's work, which he will speak about today, addresses how contemporary flamenco musicians have negotiated the relationship between these traditions, which they've inherited, and modernity. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Manasi Prasad, Director of the Indian Music Experience Museum. I should mention that Professor Bethencourt will take questions from the audience. Please type your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. Over to you, Manasi.
Thank you, Pratiti, and welcome to everybody who's tuning in for this session on flamenco, which we're all eagerly waiting to hear more about. Just wanted to say a few words about the Indian Music Experience Museum, which is India's first and only interactive museum of music. The vision of this museum is to introduce everybody, but especially young people, to the diversity of music from the traditional to the contemporary. Our museum works in several areas, including exhibition, conservation, education, public programs, and community outreach. As part of our many initiatives that we do online has been this series of online talks under the title of Music from Around the World, where it is our vision to explore the connections between various forms of music and get our community here in India to understand more about the several genres of music that exist around the world. And we're really happy this evening to have with us Dr. Bethencourt Llobet, who is here with us. I wouldn't like to take too much time with doing a long introduction. I think we will leave his details in the chat box. Just very quickly, Dr. Bethencourt is, like Pratiti said, a musicologist, guitarist, and lecturer at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid. He studied flamenco guitar and musicology at the Granada University. And after a year in Edinburgh, he conducted his PhD thesis at the Newcastle University. He's done a lot of research on modern or post Paco de Lucia, flamenco music, new flamenco music, and its linkages with other modern genres, electro flamenco producers, Cuban jazz musicians, and has worked widely across Europe in several capacities, both as a scholar as well as a musician. So we're really happy to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. And over to you, and request the audience to please keep your questions flowing in the chat box. We'd love to take as many of them in the end of this lecture. So over to you, Dr. Bethencourt.
Thank you very much, Manasi. First of all, just to say thank you to you for having me. Can you see the presentation here?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And if we put like this, better? Yes. Okay, so first of all, just to say thank you very much for having me on board on this series of conferences. And today I'm gonna do like a very brief introduction, no, like a cultural and ethnomusicological introduction to flamenco that I hope you find interested. So first of all, after say thank you, I just wanted to say because flamenco has been approached from many different angles and perspectives. So I'm gonna introduce some of those perspectives, and for example, a geographical perspective. Then I'm gonna do a very brief historical perspective, very brief, because I would like to focus today more about the rhythms and the different styles or sub-styles in flamenco, which also have this connection with India and with America. So it brings these different days, these talks together. And I put this image here because I think that to understand here this image from the film of Carlos Saura's Flamenco movie, that to understand new flamenco or contemporary flamenco is very important to know the tradition, the rhythms, and I wanted to show you some of this rhythm, how it works, so we can understand that. Okay, so first of all, I want all of you to look at this image, this very strong image. Yeah, we see the dancing, we see the guitar playing, we see the hand clapping, we see the children there. Yeah, and it connects with us to many different concepts of authenticity as a cultural and historical construction. It connects us with the transmission, how knowledge is transmitted. It connects us how with displacement, and it connects with the concept of identity. But also when we listen to music, we can hear all these and other things. Listen please to those children clapping. Okay, I'm gonna stop it here, but we listened to Maestro Gerardo Núñez, and the same that Paco de Lucia, which is one of the greatest flamenco guitarists in history, and he opened us most of the theaters around the world with his music, like other artists like Camarón de la Isla or Enrique Morente, he used to say that he didn't want to speak about the concept of race because in that image that we saw before, non-Romani and Romanis, and they were together there. He received this prize for the Príncipe de Asturias Prize award. And he said he wanted to give it to those people who didn't have anything on the fridge. No, so he said it's connected with that concept. So briefly, doing a geographical approximation, we find that flamenco is performed today in many different contexts around the world, from Spain to Japan, to India, to New York City or Los Angeles. Well, thank you to all those artists, of course. And in 2010, it received that award by UNESCO called as a cultural heritage of mankind, similar to Fado, for example, and other musics. But it was a long time before all those international artists, flamenco artists, that they knew, how flamenco had that kind of projection, and they created like this small video that I'm gonna put. Although I don't know if you will be able to see the subtitles, but I will translate. It's very simple. You will listen like a voice, and they say it's a pray, it's a singing, or what it is, what it's doing, and then it talks a little bit about this geography and speak about the concept of identity. So I will translate, but please let me know if you can hear.
Y hasta las lágrimas de tu cirio y están sin pie do tu muerte. Ay, 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 ay,
Es difícil saber si este hombre está rezando, cantando o llorando, o si está haciendo las tres cosas a la vez. Lo cierto es que a esa profunda expresión musical de sentimientos, propia del sur de España, en múltiples lugares del mundo, se le llama flamenco. El flamenco es un valioso tesoro que diferentes culturas y civilizaciones, desde los griegos y romanos a los cristianos, judíos y musulmanes, a través del diálogo y el mestizaje cultural, fueron alumbrando a lo largo de los siglos en el sur de la península ibérica. Para completar el cuadro, a finales del siglo XVIII, a esta impronta primigenia vino a sumarse la arrebatadora personalidad del pueblo gitano. Desde entonces, para los grupos humanos que pueblan ese triángulo geográfico formado por las minas de la Unión en Murcia, las dehesas de Badajoz y las marismas de la Baja Andalucía, el flamenco es mucho más que unas músicas y unas danzas bellas y emocionantes. Para estos millones de personas, el flamenco es nada más y nada menos que la fuente de su memoria y el ritmo de sus vidas, es decir, sus señas de identidad.
Identity. Sorry, the subtitles were not there. I was trying to translate at the same time. So they were saying that for all those people, can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes, now we can. We couldn't hear the translation. So
sorry, but just to say that they say for all those people, from the influences from the Arabic, Jewish, and also the Romanis that they arrive, we will speak in a second, from India, and that is in our language and even in our music, the influence, that all those influence are part of our identity and construction of language and music. tradition. When some specialists, some flamencologists, we call flamenco specialists, they speak about the origins of the flamenco singing, they always create these kind of controversial triangles related to authenticity, to explain where flamenco singing is coming from. But what happened to the cities outside those imaginary triangle, like for example, the city of Granada with this beautiful Alhambra palace, or where these flamencos, there were, some of them even they were born in these little caves over opposite that Alhambra palace, which is very important. And they live also, now we're doing 100 years after this famous concurso, this contest of flamenco deep song organized by poet Federico García Lorca and Manuel de Falla, the composer Manuel de Falla, and other intellectuals. So flamenco Granada has been very important. So if you search on the web, you find other triangles who connect different cities, but all inside of this, what we conceptualize today as the Andalusia county. But there's other counties, like in Murcia, we see here on the right-hand side, or we see here like Huelva county, and Extremadura, and Madrid, and Catalonia, in Barcelona. This, because of displacement, there are flamencos in many different places around the Iberian Peninsula. And it's not fair just to speak about the origins in this very, very small area. It's true that then is the Iberian Peninsula, the south and the north of Africa, obviously is like a melting pot, because we're going to have all this influence coming, as I say before, from India, because obviously the Romani, there's an influence, there's some publications who speak about all this migration that Professor Pratiti was mentioning earlier, coming from Punjab through Pakistan, actual Pakistan, for many centuries, and how they arrived in the Iberian Peninsula around the 15th century. But it's important, and how they did a reinterpretation of a folk music who was in the area, some romances, but flamenco will speak, the concept of flamenco as we understand it today will speak from the end of the 18th century. So it's still a few years that the music it was done, it was conceptualized with different words. When that discovery about the Romanis were coming from North India happened, it was sung by singers like Camarón de la Isla in his album Soy Gitano, or for example, Maestro Pepe Habichuela, he have this connection with collaborating with Indian musicians. For example, in this album called Yerba Buena, you can hear a little bit. Very interesting how flamenco guitar how it's mixed with tabla, etc., and how they fuse so well. So when we speak about this Spanish Roman, this is a very good friend of mine. We also many concepts of authenticity, displacement, race, identity. They rise up, and we saw that also even in the dancing, the flamenco dancing, we have some kind of elements that reminds a little bit of Kathak dancing. We saw some other collaboration with flamenco musicians, for example, Anushka Shankar in this album of Travelers in 2011. We saw it live. We were at Newcastle at that time and it was beautiful. For example, that is not from that performance, but we see the dancer and how he's playing with a flamenco horn, which is a percussion instrument coming from Peru, from America, and how we can use it now. Yeah. And the sitar. sorry for interrupting this, but as you see in that example we just saw, for us it will be a tango rhythm that I will explain later, so you can learn some of the clapping. It will be interesting for you how you listen to that example of the daughter of the maestro Ravi Shankar, doing this special collaboration. We also did a project when we were in Newcastle, thank you to Gem Arts, and it was called From India to the Iberian Peninsula, collaborating with a flamenco dancer, Maite Beltran, and Nick Abel, who was a student of Maestro Ravi Shankar. But then, so we have that influence from India, and then we have the influence from the other side, from America. So in flamenco, and we have this musicologist, he's called Faustino Núñez, who has a very interesting website you can join. It's called Flamencopolis. You can see it here, to understand these rhythms. And he has loads of recordings, so you can hear the different styles we're going to speak in today, that many songs that we call in Spanish cantes de ida y vuelta, there's some of these songs that they went to America, to especially Cuba and Mexico, etc., and then they return the songs with influences of the rhythms. So he will say, like, for example, the rumba, the rumba or the tango, which are binary, we will explain, you can divide in 4/4 or 8/4, are from the American influence. So the wonderful thing of flamenco, and it has all those influences from India, from the Romani, has the influence from America, has the influence from the Arabs and Jewish, and from the folk music. And then we have other writings, very important, from people from America, for example, like William Washabout, this book, very academic book called Flamenco Music and the National Identity of Spain. But I always wonder about that title called National Identity of Spain. Is many people in Spain that they don't identify themselves with flamenco, although maybe from outside Spain, we think, oh, everyone dances flamenco, everyone sings flamenco, and it's not. As I say, it's many people, even in Andalusia, they don't identify with flamenco, but many other people from Madrid, they do, or people from Catalonia, or people from the north of the Iberian Peninsula, that they do. I will give you a list of books, some academic books, like, for example, this Anthropology and Flamenco, this Sociology and Flamenco. This is a sociological approach as well, Flamenco and Power, this academic book. And let me see if I can move this. And this other book, very new book, that about the origins of flamenco, and there's non-academic books. The only thing there are those in Spanish, the histories of flamenco, which are very important as well. Let me see if I can pad. Okay, I cannot move the presentation. I don't know why is that. Okay, now, okay, so when I started with flamenco, I was living in Granada, and I was learning by oral transmission. Traditionally, flamenco was learned by oral transmission in your family. If your family members, they play guitar, like my family, or you could go to very small traditional guitar workshop. And at the same time, I was going to university. So it was two worlds happening at the same time. Then on the other side, when I went to Edinburgh first, and later to Newcastle University, I wanted to continue researching about flamenco. And my colleagues, they were saying, oh, Paco, you're crazy. Why are you going to Newcastle to research, because if you are in Granada? And it's because I wanted to have new theories and like a new cultural approach related to popular music studies, which were leading by Richard Middleton at that time in that university, Ian Biddle, who they were writing about flamenco, and these concepts of displacement, authenticity, technology, which I was very interested. But then I was coming back to do all interviews to flamenco singers, famous flamenco singers like Enrique Morente in Granada, or Tomatito, who was the guitarist of Camarón de la Isla. So I was doing my fieldwork back in Spain as well, and then taking those all those interviews and going back to England and to analyze them with perspective, which is very interesting, to go away and to analyze with new theories and perspective. From those musicians like Tomatito, there was transcriptions at that time, with musical notation, but still flamenco was learned and is learned today by oral transmission. Normally here with Gerardo Núñez courses, the maestro, I put that example, normally plays, and then the musicians who came from all around the world, they just learning by imitation, and then they can change slightly. Some of those musicians, they move from Andalusia to Madrid, as Camarón de la Isla did, Enrique Morente, and they used to meet. This book about flamenco in Madrid is very important, being the capital, because obviously there were the performance spaces. It's a shame that we have heard like mythical, wonderful clubs like this Little Candela in the neighborhood of Lavapiés. They just told us that this week has closed down because of all the COVID situation. That is very, very sad news. And for example, I had the luck to perform in that space. Also learning, I was learning by playing for the flamenco dancers, learning by playing to the flamenco singers and percussionists. This is the flamenco box, el cajón, which is a Afro-Peruvian instrument, and the flamenco musicians like Paco de Lucia adapted and now is part of flamenco nowadays. We see other historical performance spaces like the Villarrosa has closed down, and other Casa Patas is closed, and La Fundación is open, and they're just trying the tourists to come back to Spain, and so they can open again. Hopefully they will open their doors. So that's why we organized that conference in Complutense University, talking about flamenco artists and the performance spaces in the past and at the present in times of COVID. Hopefully like a publication of 8-9 articles will come soon. So, well, so I was saying that the things I have learned more than from the books, of course, I consider themselves like secondary sources. I've learned by playing for the dancers, and they are always not only the dancers, but the flamenco singers, especially, which are very important in flamenco tradition. The way to learn the rhythms that I'm going to try to teach you today. I didn't want to do like a very long historical approach, because I prefer to do some practice with you, more practical. I think it's going to be less, a little bit less theoretical, but I want to briefly to speak about pre-flamenco from the late 18th century. Some fandango dances in the bailes de Candil parties, studied by Dr. Miguel Ángel Berlanga from University of Granada, which are considered like a little bit of the pre-flamenco that we're gonna analyze today. Also, is very interesting that the concept itself, flamenco, it appears in the newspapers around 1847 in a newspaper that Faustino Núñez has found, and for a performance in Madrid. So before, they used to call it baile de palillos, dances with castanets, or other kind of names, but it was not the flamenco concept is quite recent. No, we're talking about half of the 19th century. And then this is the period where they call it the golden age of this little performance spaces called the Café Cantantes. There was a period that they have conceptualized as the opera flamenca, which were more performances in the theaters, etc., etc. Then like a renaissance, trying to go back to the deep song singings. And then we have a very interesting period that we call New Flamenco, which is related also flamenco with popular music studies, fusion between flamenco and jazz, fusion between flamenco and Latin American music, etc. I will put you some examples later, and also I will bring it to contemporary flamenco, to this electronic flamenco, which is made today by Rosalia or singers like Maria Jose Yergo, etc., etc. Okay, so after this very brief historical move, I want to focus on some of the styles. And because obviously there's many, if you go to a very authentic performance space like this one is called La Peña La Platería in Granada. It was a little club for like a society for aficionados, of flamenco. They used to meet there for singing for themselves, and then they have some little concerts and like this. They will show you very proudly their all the styles of flamenco, like in a family tree. So, which is interesting, related to this concept of authenticity and how they put in the, in the base of the tree some of the styles. I'm gonna, Faustino Nuño has created this wonderful garden connecting all those styles. So that will be very complex for just one session. So I'm gonna focus in this little tree, which I think you can see it easily. We're gonna focus in some of the branches, the most important branches. So I'm gonna teach you a little bit about fandangos, and then we're gonna move which are in 3-beat times, and then we're gonna see tangos, which you see ango. We can speak a little bit of the African influence on those styles. We call it palos. Palos, the translation of palo in Spanish is stick, but here it will be style or sub-style. So we're gonna speak about fandangos, then tango, which can be considered, because it's binary, and we can do 2/4, 4/4, or 8/4 rhythms transcribed. We could put it together here with the rumba included in these sons that who went to America and returned. And then I will speak about the seguirillas, which is connected with the ethos of lost, very sad, like that saetas we were hearing at the beginning. And then we will speak about solear. Solear, it comes from the word loneliness. So it's a beautiful palo. And then maybe from that branch to speak about bulerías and cantiñas. Okay, so let's start with the fandango. If you can see from this film of Carlos Saura, recorded in 1995, I have that music. One second, here you can see as well. You will see the 3/4 beat that they're doing on the table. Yeah. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now it's a change of tonality or modality for the second singer. We're going to stop it here. I hope you're enjoying these examples. That will be a transcription of how we understand these rhythms. I don't know if you, Manasi, if you can confirm that you've seen and listened in the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, excellent. So we can do, I don't know if you've seen myself, you could organize these in groups of 3 and having, but also some transcription we've counted in 12. And here's the Andalusian cadence that I was playing in a second. You see that little boxes which showing us how when you played on the flamenco guitar. This is a transcription by David Leiva, but we could do a little bit of the singing. Let me see 1 second. We can do a little bit of the, I want you to do a little bit of the clapping. Okay, so we're gonna clap in three times. Every time you see, this is alternative way of showing for the people who are not used to some more occidental notation. So we're gonna do with the foot, when we say pie, we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And here, if we count it in 12, it will be 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so the 4th time, we're gonna do 2 beats, two times to stop in 10, which is a very is typical in flamenco music. So I don't know if I can hear you clapping. So we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That we call 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and have a little rest there. Okay, you can practice now because I cannot hear you. You can practice, you can hear with my guitar. I will play a little fandango. I don't know if you can see myself, my guitar. Andalusian cadence. If you were following with that rhythms, no, just keeping 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Yeah, with the fandango. And harmonically, could you hear my guitar okay from there? Yes, Manasi?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, and very interesting, look at these chords because it's an E with a 9, 7 to A minor, yeah? And then it's G7 when it starts. So the second part of the fandango, it works very in a tonal way. We can think even in C major, going from G7 to C. But the first part, we see if we were in the key of C, we see that we're using the Andalusian cadence, we're using A minor, G7, F, and instead of E minor, that it will be in the key of C. For flamencos, this is very important, very, very interesting. They use this A minor, G7, F, and E major with the ninth look. And for flamenco people, musicians, you could think, oh, we are 6, 5, 4, 3, or 1, 7, 6, 5 going to A minor. But that A minor for flamenco, they see it for the universe, because we're talking about modal harmony. We're not talking about tonal harmony here. We're talking about modal harmony. They see it as 4, 3, 2, and 1, because that chord here is the center of their universe. So that's very, very interesting. And this, that 4 notes, listen in Andalusian cadence that we call it. That is not only and the use as well, like with a sharp, G sharp. Yeah, beautiful that sound. And so we found this in fandangos. We found it in soleás as well. I would like you to hear like a very young flamenco singer called Rocío Márquez, which this wonderful voice. So you can see that fandangos singing.
Dorillo Barcelona, un anillo te prometo. Dorillo Barcelona, si dices por la mañana, ese que canta quién es. Ay, la otra noche en mi ventana. El 13 ¿dónde estará? Y el 11 le dijo al 12. Y el 13 ¿dónde estará? Y le respondió el 14. El 15 te lo dirá. El 15 te lo dirá, que el 16 lo conoce. Y con un pie.
And then he will start to sing again. A wonderful example, this one of our dear flamenco singer called Rocío Márquez from Huelva. Now, there was this conference organized by Mayra Goldberg and Anthony Pisa in New York City, and they published this book about the global reach of fandango in music, songs, and dance, but not just Spanish flamenco fandangos, but also Indians, Africans, and Gypsies. So there's some very interesting publications by Mayra Goldberg as well. Okay, so after seeing this example of music in threes, like the fandango, we see rhythms in 2, what we call binary rhythms, like the tangos. That, remember that I mentioned before, Faustino Núñez said that all those rhythms of the rumba and the tangos were coming from the other, from Cuba, etc. So we have some tangos from Granada. You can see the rhythm here in 4/4 transcribed with the foot 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's the same with in African rhythms like jazz as well. The accent, sometimes we put it on the 2 and the 4. Yeah, you have the other alternative notations for the one who cannot read that notation. So please do with me. We have 2 ways of doing the clapping. We have palmas sordas, that is a very low pitch clapping that you put your fingers like this. And then we have this high clapping, normally when you play for the dancers, and is very upbeat. But when someone is singing or doing the flamenco little variation on the guitar, you will use that very low clapping. So we're going to do the low clapping here and put your foot on the 1 and then 2, 3, 4, put in the accent at 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then sometimes we found on the second beat, we have 2 quavers here. So it will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna put you a little example so you listen that clapping a little bit faster, like 2, 3, 4, yeah. And that rhythm we found also in the rumba here with sometimes with the rest on the third beat. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, rest 4. Yes. So listen to this Tango del Pepico example. Yes, if any of you want to practice with my guitar, I'm happy to play some tangos from Granada here, and you can practice your 4/4 beat from the other side of the computer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. This is not a seguirilla, so we're talking about this, so you can practice your clapping. Sorry, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, So that's a tango typical from Granada. So you see with that rhythm of 4. As a contrast of the fandango, which is, we can divide it in 3s. Okay, so we can leave for the questions for later. Now let's go to more complicated rhythms. For example, this one is called seguirilla, which comes from the word seguidilla. And we found in very old compilations of singers by Demófilo, which was the father of the famous poet Machado, they call it Machado y Álvarez, and he recovered like 177 singings of these seguirillas, beautiful because they have a very strange meter in the poems. And the seguirilla is related to the concept of lost. If someone, for example, dies in your family, then it will say flamenco singer will sing seguirilla. Yes, so you understand a little bit of the ethos. Normally is transcribed in 3/4, 6/8, and another bit of 3/4 missing here. So it's a more complicated rhythm that normally dancers, they count in 5 beats. So they do 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and the 4, and the 5. And that really is 12 beats. Yeah, so if you count it like this, I don't know, I can know, okay? So you see there, 1, 2, 1, 2, because it's anacruza at the beginning. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We call it compases de amalgama. So we mix in rhythms of twos, like 3 twos and 2 threes. Okay, so do it with me, please. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we have 12 beats that the flamenco dancers, we said that they counted 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But obviously, because they're not counting the rest. Yes, you can keep your questions for later if you want. But this is very interesting rhythms of 12 beats in the seguirilla. I can put you an example of one of my albums. It's called Mundos, and is very easily to understand that rhythm. Listen to this, and you can keep 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Donde cae, donde cae tu sangre, territorio de mi condena.
Well, I put that example, beautiful, and did you see the voice? It's amazing. You know, it's about the pain because it's about the death. So it's for example, here it said, eran tan grandes mis penas, so they were so huge the pain I feel inside of my heart. So, and again here using the Andalusian cadence to accompany. Is some chord substitutions. The cadence here is what the flamencos call tocar por medio. That is D minor. I don't know if you see my guitar. C major with the 9th, B flat, and A major. Again, instead of going minor, they do major. So it's T minor that they substitute here. The B minor they substitute with G minor. Golpe here, keeping the golpe. That's why we have this little plastic you see here, because if not, with my nail, I will totally destroy this cypress wood flamenco guitar. Okay, so I don't want to go too deep with the chords, because I know that we have musicians in the session and we have other musicians which are not musicians, but this is what we call toque por medio. It will be the D minor, C7, B flat, and the A, instead of A minor, they do it into A major. That is, again, the center from this Andalusian cadence, the center for many palos like seguirillas, tangos, and bulería por soleá, etc., etc. Okay, I have an example of a seguirilla of a very young flamenco singer called Israel Fernandez and Diego del Morao, who is a wonderful guitar player, playing this famous club in Madrid called Café Berlin. And listen a little bit so you can keep the feel of this. just a few seconds for you to have like a quick, it was with this beat I was explaining, but you see played by these amazing flamenco guitarist and singer. Okay, so now Soleá is related to seguirilla. It will be one of the major branches. They say for flamencos, Soleá, which is coming from loneliness, is the mother of flamenco. So it's one of the very huge flamenco styles, and sub style later with the bulería and other. And it have these wonderful, again, 12 beats, although in Spain we put one, we count 10 plus 2, because saying in Spanish 11, 12 is a little bit strange, so we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Yeah, instead of, we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Yeah, and well, here's for the audience who don't know. Let's see how interesting here is in Soleá. Sometimes we put the accent on the 6 here in the big 6. We put, we do now is 3, 3, and 2, 2, and 2. Yes, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That we call it 1, 2. You see here 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and sometimes the accent of 6. To do it even more plastic, we move it to a 7. So it becomes this rhythm 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's a beautiful, beautiful rhythm cycle. I know you have in India, you have very long cycles as well, from 12 beats, from 24 beats, and even longer, much more longer than we do. But flamencos unconsciously, they're not counting, but they have all those cycles inside when they play in Soleá. Yeah, so they will do, for example, I don't know if you see my guitar. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, normally Soleá is very stretching, very flexible to adapt to the pain that the singer is singing. For example, I had one that I want to put you some Soleá from Maestro Enrique Morente. It's called Soleá of the Signs, and the lyrics is just saying, presumes que eres la ciencia, you pretend, you presume that you are the science. And he repeats that you're proud to be that you are the science, but if you were science, you will have understand me, no, before you left me. So it's always, that lyrics of loss, related to loss, but not like seguirilla where someone died, but more about loneliness, no, when someone leave you and then you feeling that inside. So listen to that beat that I was showing before. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2.
ciencia yo no lo comprendo así, porque si la ciencia fuera, ay, me hubiera comprendido a mí, porque siendo tú la ciencia, ay, no me comprendió a mí.
Okay, so wonderful, Solea. Here's the transcription, a very simplified transcription. That's for the dancers. Let's leave that. Just is even a transcription for the children to learn about how to accompany, so you understand the structure of the Solea who were Enrique Morente singing, and that's the A part that he repeated with the Andalusian cadence. And then we have like a B part that it works more dominant, more tonal, and then back to the Andalusian cadence. Okay, I'm gonna move. This is some of the transcription from the dancing. I would like to show you some dancing of this because it's just beautiful. But just to say that even modern singers, like for example Rosalía or María José Yergó, they're doing a new approach to all these rhythms. In the case of Rosalía, that one of our PhD students here at Universidad Complutense de Madrid is doing his PhD about this album and all the collaboration. We found, for example, I'm going to show you in a kind of pop or modern electronica flamenco example, how that beat, very sad, we hear in the Soleá or the Bulería por Soleá, because it's from the same family, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and what these pop singers they doing with these rhythms. I hope you found it interesting.
Me da miedo cuando sale sonriendo pa' la calle, porque todos pueden ver los hoyuelitos que te salen. Y el aire cuando pasa por levantarte el cabello, y el oro que te viste por amarrarse a tu cuello, y el cielo de la luna que tú quieras mirarlo, hasta del agua que bebe cuando te moja los labios. Pienso en tu mirada clavada, una bala en el pecho. Pienso en tu mirada clavada, una bala en el pecho. Pienso en tu mirada clavada, una bala en el pecho. Pienso en tu mirada, me da miedo cuando sale.
Okay, you can find this easily in YouTube and see how we listen to that rhythm. Okay, so other rhythm, we're gonna move to more fast rhythm from this family, like Bulería. It also has this 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you can organize this in 2 6s. Yes, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. Yes, and listen, that's one of the transcriptions with the offbeats, and we will listen a few examples, and then I will put you some alegrías, which means happiness. So I know we coming to an end soon of the presentation, so I don't want to miss the singing. Okay, listen to this bullet. Yeah. He passed away, and that's his son playing that we will listen before in the flamenco club. very fast, very fast rhythm, again with the Andalusian cadence, yeah, tocada por medio, with those chords and the repiques that you see when the two, sometimes we have two palmeros, 2 or 3 doing this taka 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 taka, you know, playing on the beat and playing off the beat, you know, in this complex. So now the last related to this soleá and bulería is the alegría, that means happiness. And it's typical from Cádiz, has the same rhythm that we saw. That's a PhD thesis from a student called Sandra Jimenez. And she has this PhD called about the flamenco dancing, an instrument on the feet. So I want to put you an example, and this is some of the repiques that they do: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Listen to that. You're gonna see now on the flamenco dancing. You can see in the flamenco singer here, and we're gonna see in the flamenco dancer. Y de palmeros. 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see the palmeros?
Mira qué bonito está el faro de la caleta, de noche la oscuridad. Ay, 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 busca mi niña Carmela, le gusta cayo, ay, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran 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 tran, tiriti tran tran trero, ay, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran tran tran, tiriti tran tran trero, ay, tiriti tran tran tran.
That will be the singing with a typical tiriti tran tran tran. This is a PhD thesis about flamenco clapping from Bernat Jiménez de Cisneros Puig that I met in Barcelona, and a musicological approximation about the phonography and the contemporary practice. And just for the dance, we call it baile, just an example from that Carlos Saura film from flamenco from '95. Listen the dancers dancing these beautiful alegría rhythms, you know, that we call it canting as well, with the mirrors, and we get into it in end. So at least, so you, I'm sure you have some questions, so you can. There's a famous teacher we call maestra. See, 8, 9, 10. 3, 5, 6.
A ver esas manos como paloma.
part is called Escobilla. That's where the flamenco dancers, they lead the performance. Okay, so I'm gonna just stop here. So I'm sure you have some questions. I could put you more examples. Hopefully next time we can do it not only online, but I could come with a flamenco singer and dancer, maybe to India, and my flamenco guitar, and the energy will be different, obviously, if we are together, but and do some kind of collaboration. But I would like to thank you. Thanks, Manasi. I think we are well in time now. This is my email address from Madrid University, and also academia.edu, where you can find some of my my PhD thesis, which is in English, and other texts. I can send you introductions to flamenco, which are in English. And also you can contact me through Instagram or through Facebook. And I would like to give you as well, to share with you my music, my albums, some of my music. This album, Mirar Atrás or Mundo, which is related to a subject, a model that I teach of world musics in Madrid Complutense. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that you have. Here's some of the books that I've been mentioning, and some of the articles as well, and I will send you all this material. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could stop the screen share, we'll move on to the questions now.
Of course.
First of all, it's been greatly enlightening, especially the understanding of the different rhythms that are characteristic of the various subcategories or subgenres of flamenco. And I think as a musician, that part has been personally extremely enriching, and gives one a sense of the complexities in rhythm that there are with each of these subgenres. So thank you so much. We'll move on to questions. And the first one from Joseph Samuel. There was the first piece of music that you played, there was a gentleman singing in a crowd. And the question is, was the language Roma, or what was the language? And typically, is it only in Spanish? What is sort of the dialects that the song?
He was singing in Spanish, but it's true that this kind of singing of deep flamenco, like Timothy Mitchell conceptualized, sorry, some colleagues here on the university, so maybe you can hear them. They are also using some Calais word, some Romani words in the Iberian Peninsula. They call it this part of Rome, which is called Calais. Yeah, that is that, and they sing in Spanish, but with some Calais words in the middle. And also is these songs of pain that we have in Easter time, that we call it saetas. Yeah, saetas, which is very connected with the seguirilla that I was playing you before about, with the ethos of the lost. But sometimes saetas is related to religious as well. So they have images of the Virgin or images of the Christ. The people is carry on top of, and they're carrying underneath, and they carry these images, these wood images, and the flamencos, they are singing to them. They singing these famous saetas in Easter time. So it's another vocal expression, about connected to religiosity and pain.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I'll quickly move on. As I said, we don't have much time, but we'll quickly move on to the next question. And this is from Sri Lakshmi Guru Raja, who first thanks you for your presentation, which was informative and interesting. And her question is also related to the Indian context, where we find that traditional forms of music and dance, while they have takers, it is always a struggle to continue to keep their popularity up in younger audiences and young learners. So the question is, how popular is flamenco in the general culture of Spain today? Do you find young people? I saw a lot of young musicians that were part of your presentation, but do young people people come to learn the music, the dance, the costume, and do they attend these performances? Is it a big thing?
Yeah, it's a big thing, and it always it was at the beginning like a minority, for music for minorities. And after this generation of Paco de Lucia, Camarón de la Isla, and then it becomes more popular. And what is interesting in the 70s, 80s, when they conceptualized as new flamenco, it becomes some of these artists, they became very popular on the Spanish scene. And now again, thank you to artists like Rosalía, that maybe you know, these very young artists, which or projects like Fue el Fandango or María José Yergo, again, they are putting all these old rhythms and all this old flamenco inside of a new aesthetics of electronica and popular music from today. So the young kids which are listening now to trap, no, they listen to Rosalía and they say, "Oh, this is cool." Okay, but now she's singing a lyrics from La Niña de los Peines. So maybe they go and research who was La Niña de los Peines. Yeah, so from her, from this pop artist who has been studying flamenco even in Barcelona, they are learning about the old flamenco singers. So it's becoming more and more popular thanks to those new artists who are coming now, because sometimes flamenco has been badly treated in Spain. So it was more recognized outside Spain, in Paris, in France, or in England, or in the States, that people still in Spain, they criticize it and they say, "Oh no, it's the music of the gypsies," or something like that, and it carries out a very bad connotation still nowadays that we try to break. And we study now in the university, and we think it's a wonderful music, not only music and dance and culture, and that it should be studied.
No, that's true. Again, a lot of parallels with the Indian context, where, of course, you have the traditional forms of music, and then you have artists who combine these traditional modes, or ragas and rhythms, talas, and combine them with influences from around the world, which gives it a new dimension and a new audience as well. So let's quickly move on. I'll try and take another couple of questions because we can't take all of them that are there.
Okay.
This is a question that's related to the research that you're doing. And Bharat Ranganathan asks, what is the impact of the modern era flamenco on the identity of the art form? Several times you find that when there are modern interpretations, somewhere the traditional forms don't continue to be preserved. And it kind of loses its identity into something that becomes more modern and perhaps not connected with its roots. So the question is, are there any organizational systems and structures to preserve the true roots of this art form?
Yes, yes. There's some, especially all those spaces that I showed you before, like Las Peñas, these little clubs, yeah, that we saw in Granada, or institutions like Instituto de Cultura Gitana. There's some institutions here in Madrid, also in Andalusia, mainly in Andalusia, which of flamencologists who try to preserve, because it was considered like a UNESCO heritage of mankind. They try to preserve all the old recordings, all the old form, exactly. And there was always, from all these purists, the idea that they didn't want flamenco to have an evolution and to include all this jazz influence, all this pop influence and all that, but it's part of the process of, I imagine, any single music from jazz.
That's
maybe you could try to preserve the sound of New Orleans. Yeah, wonderful. Yes, but then it's going to be jazz in New York City and Chicago and India, and it's in a constant evolution. And as any live genre like flamenco, which is alive, and the young musicians, they always learn from the roots, but then they want to fly and to move constantly. But
what
yes,
music without change. Change is a part of every form.
It's part of that. So even though there's some flamencologists or the generation of Antonio Mairena, who tried to go back to the deep flamenco song and to put it in a cage, so anyone who was not singing in that cage was not doing authentic flamenco. Is a double reading of the concept of authenticity. Is authenticity to the past and authenticity of the moment that you're living. So it's like two horses stretching like a
It's this push and pull between tradition and change that defines several musical cultures. I'll quickly move on to our last question, and this comes from one of India's best known percussionists, B.C. Manjunath, who is also a very good friend of our institution, the IME, and he's collaborated widely with
pleasure.
musicians from around the world, including several flamenco artists as well. And he's really asking about the rhythms because, he's after all a percussionist. And that was something that I noticed as well, which is that you see rhythms in three and multiples of 3, 6, 12. And then, of course, you have the even fours.
Yes.
But do you see rhythms in odd meters as well? 5 beats, like you'd see in jazz music. Jazz 5 is a very common sort of meter that you'd find, or 7. So are there people who are experimenting with these newer meters as well, or do you generally stick to 3, 6, 9, 12, and 4?
Okay, so yes, it is a very good question. Thank you very much. Yes, there's a new generations of artists, like for example, Antonio Lizana, who also is a jazz saxophonist. So maybe he's playing in 5, he's playing in 7s, he's playing in 11s, or even they're mixing. But then the traditional flamenco listeners, they will get very confused. So they mix the beginning of a seguirilla, for example, the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, with the 7, 8, 9, 10. So they're creating like a new rhythm from 2 old rhythms. Or Paco de Lucia was very criticized at the moment because he was taking, for example, the rumba rhythm, and they was taking the sonority of another style and put it together. And this has been conceptualized as meta flamenco. So it's a mix between, for example, in this famous Entre Dos Aguas, I imagine everyone knows, this, this is doing rumba rhythm, and then he's doing this cadence, which is coming from another singing form that is called granaína. When it's doing E minor. You see, and this granaína, it was sung without rhythm, So this is granaína that doesn't have like a very rhythmic rhythm, and then Paco de Lucia mixed it with the rhythm of the rumba. So he started to do these combinations, and all the new young generation, they keep in the traditional beats and then mixing with these 5, 7, 11s and more crazy rhythms. So thank you for that question. Hopefully I can come with you, one day and bring the flamenco percussion instruments as well. So we can do it live because it's different.
I'm afraid that's all the time that we have. And the other questions, those who have questions, please feel free to write in to Dr. Bethencourt.
Yes.
I think he's left his ID.
Please. I can give you my email address from university here on the chat. And you can
so all that's left to say is thank you so much I know in flamenco, as with Indian music, the audience has to be very participative. In India, if the audience likes something that the artist does, we say bhale or we say shabash. And I know in Spain you say ole. So ole.
Ole, yeah. Warsa, oh yeah.
Thank
Ole.
you. Thank you so much. And it's been an
Thank you
absolute
very much.
pleasure to have you here. And with that, I'll hand over back to Pratiti to wind up the session this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bethencourt, Llobet, for that
Thank you very much.
journey through the history of flamenco, its styles and forms and evolution, its many influences and resonances for us in India with the migration of Roma from northwestern India, Rajasthan and Punjab, as you pointed out. I also wanted to mention the word bailaoras on one of your slides, flamenco dancer, which our viewers would be familiar with from the Portuguese bailar, to dance.
Yeah.
It is one of our musical forms along the southwestern coast, baila.
Baila.
So, you have also given us a window into flamenco's characteristic chord progressions and complex rhythms with the clapping and foot tapping, demonstrations and the dances at the end, all of which have the vibrant energy of the form. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to our audience for tuning in and for your questions and participation. Please join us for our next program on BIC Streams. Thank you.
I will. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.